It was the kind of scene you read about in tabloids but never imagined living. A pregnant wife, a billionaire husband, a beautiful mistress, and a public explosion at one of New York City's most exclusive restaurants. Ava Hastings never imagined her fairy tale romance would unravel so dramatically. Pregnant and glowing, she had walked into Le Bernardin in New York City, hoping to surprise her billionaire husband, Alexander Hastings, with the most wonderful news she believed would cement their future together forever. Instead, she found him laughing intimately with the mysterious, impossibly beautiful Lucinda. In that instant, everything Ava believed in her marriage, her sense of security, her dreams for their child came crashing down at that elegantly adorned table. What followed was a night of tears, anger, and shocking revelations. Little did she know, fate was about to unveil even more devastating secrets. Ava Dequa Hastings had grown up in a modest home in suburban Connecticut. Her family wasn't poor, but frugality was a necessity. She learned early on that nothing in life was handed to you on a silver platter. Her father was a dedicated schoolteacher who worked long hours, spending his weekends grading papers, while her mother juggled a small floral shop and the raising of 4 children. It was a busy, loving household, but one where money was always tight. Ava's parents had impressed upon her the value of education and hard work. From a young age, Ava immersed herself in her studies. She excelled academically, entering her teenage years with the kind of work ethic that left her teachers awestruck. By the time she was accepted into a prestigious Ivy League university, everyone who knew her was certain she was destined for success. Yet, she was completely unprepared for how drastically her life would change the moment she laid eyes on Alexander Hastings. Alexander seemed to fill every room he entered. Tall, confident, with sharply defined features, he exuded a magnetism that demanded attention. He was the sole heir to the Hastings fortune, an empire built on centuries-old shipping routes and now diversified into real estate, tech startups, and a global network of luxury hotels. Most of his classmates whispered about his wealth, sometimes in awe, other times with envy or contempt. But Ava barely heard any of that at first. The only thing she remembered from their very first conversation was how Alexander made her feel as though she were the single most important person in the world. They met on a chilly autumn afternoon at a charity mixer hosted by the university's business club. Ava was there by chance, volunteering to help organize the event. Alexander, then a junior with big dreams of expanding his family's legacy, had come to explore sponsorship opportunities. Ava was pinned between 2 large vases of flowers, struggling to adjust a heavy banner, when she heard a warm, confident voice behind her. "Need a hand?" She turned, her heart pounding, and saw him. In that moment, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't an heir with unimaginable privileges. He was just a guy offering a helping hand, a charismatic stranger who took her breath away. They laughed over the tediousness of preparing for a big event. He teased her about how she expertly maneuvered around financial donors, persuading them to contribute. She teased him about how he appeared so calm, as if hosting lavish events was second nature. There was an undeniable spark. By the end of the night, he had asked if he could walk her home, and she had hesitated only a second before nodding yes. Over the next few years, their courtship felt like a story plucked straight from a romance novel. They studied together in the library's hidden corners, passed notes in the middle of tedious lectures, and shared holiday breaks at each other's family homes. Ava's parents were initially apprehensive. How could their sensible, down-to-earth daughter truly find her place in the opulence that surrounded Alexander? But from the very start, Alexander was gracious and humble. He seemed eager to prove that his affluence didn't define him. Eventually, after graduating, Alexander asked Ava to move in with him, first into a stunning penthouse overlooking the city, then into his family's summer villa for the holidays. Though it took time for her to adjust to the shimmering chandeliers, the personal staff, and the dinners at 5-star restaurants, Ava remained herself, genuine, kind, and unpretentious. She believed in him. She trusted him. When he proposed at a small garden party, kneeling in a patch of bright red roses, she said yes through tears of joy. Their engagement was the talk of the social scene. Magazines snapped photos of the pair at galas. Tabloids published gossip about the angelic brunette from modest origins set to marry America's most eligible billionaire heir. But in their private moments, away from the cameras and prying eyes, Ava felt that none of that fanfare mattered. Alexander was the man she loved because he seemed warm, caring, and protective. Little did she know how drastically the tides would turn, how a man once brimming with kindness could transform into a stranger entangled in secrets that would leave her questioning everything. After their grand wedding, an event so lavish it took place on a private island, Ava's life entered a dreamlike state. She was no longer Ava Dequa, she had become Mrs. Alexander Hastings. Suddenly, she had an entire staff at her disposal. She accompanied Alexander to the most glamorous events, New York Fashion Week, philanthropic soirees in London, black tie fundraisers in Dubai, and even quiet weekend getaways at a small chateau in the French countryside. During those early days, Alexander was sweeter than honey. He treated Ava with gentle affection and unwavering support, making her transition into the Hastings life simpler with his constant reassurances. "You belong here," he'd whisper whenever she grew overwhelmed by the scale of their wealth or the demands of high society. "You're my wife, and that's the only thing that matters." Yet, over time, cracks began to form. After the honeymoon phase wore off, Alexander became consumed by the responsibilities of Hastings Corporation. Intense boardroom battles and constant travel demanded more and more of his time. Conferences in Tokyo, negotiations in Berlin, expansions in Brazil. It seemed the entire planet demanded his presence. At first, Ava accepted it, understanding that with such wealth came immense responsibilities. She tried to be supportive and proud, but the late-night phone calls grew longer and more secretive. Alexander would slip into an adjacent room, his conversation hushed. When she asked, he'd brush it off as sensitive corporate discussions. His phone was always locked, and he grew agitated at the slightest mention of his business dealings. Increasingly, she heard rumors circulating among the staff. She'd walk into a room and see two maids exchange uneasy glances before falling silent. The butler, once an open book, seemed to weigh every word, as though fearful of revealing something he shouldn't. Ava tried to push aside the paranoia, telling herself that wealthy people lived complicated lives. Not everything had to be suspicious. And then came the day she found out she was pregnant. The news should have been a cause for pure joy, an expansion of their fledgling family. She imagined Alexander picking out baby names, delighting in the glow of impending fatherhood. But when she told him, he stiffened momentarily, letting the news soak in for a few awkward seconds before offering her a beautiful, but distracted, kiss on the forehead. That's wonderful, darling," he had murmured, sounding more dazed than elated. She reminded herself that her husband had 1,000 obligations swirling in his mind. Perhaps he just needed time to process. She decided to lavish her love on their unborn child, patiently waiting for Alexander to catch up emotionally. What she didn't anticipate was how distant he would become. The more her belly grew, the more he seemed to vanish behind a curtain of secrecy and exhaustion. She began to see him primarily late at night, well past bedtime, and he'd leave before dawn, offering only curt goodbyes. So, on that fateful evening, she decided to make a grand romantic gesture. She dressed up to surprise him at one of the city's most upscale restaurants, believing she was doing it to save their marriage, to reignite the spark that had united them in the first place. Little did she know she would be walking straight into a heartbreak that would shatter her world. Le Bernardin, a legendary Michelin-starred restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, was known for its oceanic ambience and exquisite seafood. Reservation wait lists stretched for months, but for a Hastings, access was never a problem. Word had filtered back to Ava through a loyal staff member that Alexander had booked a private table there for an evening meeting. She thought it odd Alexander had told her he would be working late at the office, but he'd also been prone to last-minute changes, so perhaps he'd neglected to mention it. Ava donned a sleek maternity gown that draped elegantly over her blossoming figure, its silver satin reflecting her quiet longing to remind her husband of their bond. She arrived at the restaurant just as twilight descended over the city, casting the glass towers of Manhattan in a purple glow. The hostess recognized Ava and treated her with immediate deference, leading her discreetly toward the private dining area. As she passed the hushed tables filled with power brokers, socialites, and celebrities, a small wave of anxiety fluttered in her chest. "He'll be so happy to see me," she kept telling herself. "This is a romantic surprise." She carried a gift bag containing a pair of custom baby shoes embroidered with the initial H. She had envisioned presenting them to him in a tender moment of renewed connection. But the moment Ava turned the corner into the softly lit private room, her world froze. There sat Alexander, dressed in one of his tailored suits that made him appear every bit the young titan of industry he was. And across from him, leaning in intimately, was a woman of striking beauty. She was tall, with flowing dark hair and an aura of confidence, as if she owned every room she stepped into. She wore a crimson dress that clung to her curves, revealing the subtle glint of diamonds at her throat. A playful smile danced on her lips as she touched Alexander's wrist, a gesture so familiar it rattled Ava to the core. Ava stood there, gift bag in hand, breath trapped in her lungs. She watched as her husband and this mysterious woman shared what appeared to be a moment of fond laughter. Alexander's eyes shone with an intensity Ava hadn't seen in weeks, maybe months. For a heartbeat, she hoped she was mistaken. Perhaps this woman was a colleague or a high-profile client. Surely, there had to be an explanation. But then the woman leaned closer and placed a lingering kiss on Alexander's cheek, trailing her fingertip down his jaw. Ava's blood turned to ice. The hostess, sensing the impending storm, discreetly slipped away. A primal surge of emotion, betrayal, anger, heartbreak coursed through Ava, and she marched forward, unstoppable in her raw pain. Alexander jolted when he saw her. His eyes widened, and he leaped from his chair as though he'd been struck. "Ava! What are you doing here?" She barely registered her own trembling voice as she demanded, "Who is this?" The other woman regarded Ava with an expression of mild annoyance, as though Ava were the intruder. She made no effort to hide the brazen intimacy she shared with Alexander. Her lips curved into a smug smile. The confrontation felt surreal, like a scene from one of those cheap tabloids Ava had once dismissed. She had read stories of wealthy tycoons and their illicit affairs, never dreaming she would be living one. She clutched the gift bag to her chest, fighting the tears that burned behind her eyes. "Lucinda Davenport," the woman said, offering her name as though it were a jewel. "Alexander's friend." She emphasized the final word in a way that sent a sharp knife twisting into Ava's gut. Ava's vision blurred with shock and fury. She turned to her husband, her once loving husband. "Alexander, what is going on? Who is this woman?" Alexander stammered, She's just a business associate. We were discussing a new venture." "Don't insult me," Ava lashed out, her voice cracking. Is it an affair?" Alexander's lips parted, searching for words, but it was Lucinda who spoke, her voice smooth as silk. "Let's not sugarcoat it, darling. He's mine, Ava. At least, while he wants to be." In that instant, Ava Hastings felt the entire foundation of her life quake beneath her feet. She was pregnant with his child, fighting to keep their marriage intact, and he stood there, his eyes full of guilt, in the presence of a woman brazenly staking a claim on him. Betrayal roared through her veins. Without thinking, she hurled the gift bag at Alexander's chest. The tiny baby shoes tumbled out, landing softly on the plush carpet between them. She spun on her heel, ignoring her husband's pleas. "Wait. We can talk," he called out as she stormed through the hushed dining room. Heads turned, hearing her outraged sobs, but she didn't care. She left behind the glimmering chandeliers, the murmured gossip of onlookers, and above all, she left behind the perfect illusion of her marriage. The next few hours blurred together as Ava barreled through the city in a taxi, tears cascading down her cheeks. She found herself dialing her sister's number, the only person she trusted in that soul-shattering moment. When Isabel answered, Ava struggled to speak. He's with someone else." I caught him, Isabel. I'm pregnant, and he's with someone else. Isabel's voice turned fierce. Where are you, Ava? Tell me. I'm coming to get you. They ended up at Isabel's modest apartment in Brooklyn. The place was a far cry from Ava's opulent penthouse, but she felt more at home in her sister's small living room than she had in her extravagant world for a long time. Isabel wrapped her in blankets, offered her warm tea, and let Ava sob until her eyes were too swollen to stay open. For days, Ava ignored Alexander's barrage of calls and texts. He wrote frantic messages, "We need to talk." It wasn't what it looked like. "Please come home." But she couldn't face him, couldn't bear to hear his voice. She was a whirlwind of rage, sadness, and confusion. On the third day, one of Alexander's close friends, Damien, showed up at Isabel's apartment, acting as a mediator. "You know Alexander has been under immense stress," Damien pleaded. "People do stupid things. He's sorry, Ava. Just come back and let him explain." But the memory of Lucinda, with her smug, triumphant eyes, kept replaying in her mind. Ava wanted to dig deeper, to know who Lucinda was and what hold she had over Alexander. Yet, the betrayal still stung too sharply to approach him calmly. Her mother, hearing of the crisis, insisted that Ava return to the Hastings penthouse just to talk. Torn between fury and a desire for truth, Ava relented. She needed closure. She needed answers. So she ventured back into that lavish abode, uncertain if her heart could handle the conversation that awaited. When she arrived, the sprawling foyer felt colder, haunted by memories of illusions. Alexander was waiting, his eyes rimmed with dark circles, his hair disheveled. He stepped toward her tentatively, as though approaching a wounded animal. "Ava, I'm so sorry," he began, his voice trembling with remorse. "I messed up. I never meant." She cut him off, struggling to keep her composure. Don't say you never meant it. I need the truth. Who is Lucinda Davenport to you?" Alexander exhaled, dropping into an armchair. "She's my mistress," he admitted, his voice strangled with shame. "It started a few months ago. She's helped me secure certain deals. She has connections I needed to expand Hastings Corporation. One thing led to another, and I failed you." Ava's chest ached with the confession. "You used me, Alex. You let me believe everything was fine while you—" her words cracked with heartbreak. He rose, stepping closer. "No, I love you, Ava. I do. I just got trapped in this complicated arrangement. She's manipulative. She threatened." "Threatened what?" Ava spat. "To expose your secrets. You thought so little of me that you'd rather keep an affair hidden than risk a scandal. Is that all I am to you, a PR convenience?" He grabbed her hand, desperation written across his face. "You're my wife. It's more than that. There's a contract, a business deal I signed, tied to her father's conglomerate. Backing out would cost billions, maybe even destroy everything my family's built. I was weak, and I took the easy route. I never intended for it to go this far." She yanked her hand away. "It went far enough that she brags you're hers." Alexander's voice trembled. "You're carrying my child. That means everything to me." "Then why didn't you stop before it got to this point?" she whispered, her voice small but seething. "Do you have any idea how humiliated I felt, finding you like that in public, with the entire city's elite probably whispering about how your pregnant wife is a fool?" He swore under his breath, burying his face in his hands. "I'm so sorry. I'll do anything, pay anything, to get out of Lucinda's clutches. Please, Ava, give me a chance to fix this." A swirl of conflicting emotions seized her. She wanted to believe him, to cling to the hope that her marriage could be salvaged for the sake of their unborn child. But the memory of Lucinda's sneer gave her pause. She suspected Lucinda had bigger ambitions than just a fling. And if Alexander had entangled himself with her father's conglomerate, it might not be so simple. Before she could respond, a feminine voice echoed through the foyer. "You really think it's that easy, Alex?" They turned to find Lucinda herself standing at the threshold, impeccably dressed, her expression aloof. A hush fell over the room as all illusions of privacy disappeared. Ava's skin prickled, her exhaustion giving way to a fresh wave of anger. Lucinda cast an appraising gaze over Ava's pregnant belly, then shot a cold smile at Alexander. "You actually think you can ghost me? End our agreement and just walk away?" Alexander's face was ashen. "Lucinda, why are you here?" Lucinda sauntered in as though she owned the penthouse. "My father and I have an ironclad contract with you, Alex. You can't just snap your fingers and break it." She turned to Ava with a condescending stare. "And you should understand, dear. Business is business. If your husband tries to disentangle from us, the fallout will be enormous. Entire divisions of Hastings Corporation could crumble. You can wave goodbye to your precious fortune." Ava clenched her fists. "Do you think I care about money when my marriage is on the line? How dare you come here, taunting us both?" Lucinda shrugged, unperturbed. "I couldn't care less about your marriage. But Alex made promises to Mebeth Financial and Personal. If he walks away, I'll make sure the Hastings name is dragged through the mud. In court, in the press, anywhere it can hurt. I have connections of my own." Alexander exploded in frustration. "Enough. You can't hold me hostage forever." Lucinda's smirk vanished, replaced by a cold glint in her eyes. "You've made your choice. I see you want to salvage your marriage, so you're willing to betray me." She paused, brushing imaginary lint from her skirt. "Fine. But I don't play nice once I'm crossed. Remember that." With that ominous warning, she turned and strode out. The sound of the heavy doors slamming behind her echoed through the penthouse, an unsettling reminder of the storm they now faced. Ava's pulse hammered in her ears, a war raging within her. She had come seeking honesty and had found a vicious entanglement that endangered not just her marriage, but their entire family legacy. In the ensuing days, Alexander convened urgent board meetings, consulted a team of lawyers, and cancelled all his trips. He frantically tried to disentangle Hastings Corporation from Lucinda's father's conglomerate, but it was a snarled mess. The contract, hammered out in a rush when Alexander had been desperate for capital, gave Lucinda's side immense leverage. Untangling the alliance could cost billions, enough to topple the Hastings empire. Meanwhile, Lucinda made no secret of her fury. She took to social media, posting cryptic messages that implied an inside knowledge of Hastings Corporation's affairs. She was seen at exclusive clubs with influential media figures, feeding them stories. Suddenly, rumors circulated about the Hastings brand being plagued by scandal. Stocks fluctuated, and partners grew uneasy. For Ava, every new headline felt like another needle piercing her already bleeding heart. She oscillated between wanting to run far away from Alexander's complicated life and feeling compelled to stand by him for their child. He was still the father of the baby she carried. One evening, he found her alone in the penthouse library, staring out at the city lights. "Ava," he said softly, "I know words mean little now, but I'm ready to do anything. If you want a divorce, you'll get one. If you need me to sign over half my assets, I will. Just tell me how to make this right." She swallowed hard, studying the weary, regretful man before her. A flicker of old tenderness stirred within her. "It's not about money," she said quietly. "I'm trying to figure out if the man I married still exists. You cheated on me, Alexander. You never told me, even when I announced my pregnancy." "I hate myself for hurting you," he whispered, tears brimming in his eyes. "I was foolish, but also terrified. I needed Lucinda's cooperation for the deal. I convinced myself it was purely strategic. I see now how twisted that sounds. Please, I want to fix this. For us." For our child. Then prove it, she said, her voice firm. Untangle yourself from that woman, from her father's deals. Show me that you can stand on your own, because I can't raise a child in this madness. That night, she slept alone in a guest suite. She heard him pacing the halls until dawn, his voice a low murmur on the phone with lawyers. All the while, Ava wondered if love could truly survive such a profound betrayal. Lucinda's father, Alastair Davenport, was feared in the corporate world for his ruthless tactics. He had built a global conglomerate through intimidation and espionage. When Alexander sought expansion capital, Alastair had smelled an opportunity, embedding his daughter Lucinda to cement the relationship in both boardrooms and bedrooms. It had been a masterstroke. Now that Alexander wanted out, Alastair was determined to crush him. Threatening letters arrived. Anonymous calls warned of massive leaks. Some tabloids even asserted that Lucinda was pregnant with Alexander's child, a rumor designed to blow the scandal wide open. As tensions rose, Alexander's father, Philip Hastings, emerged from retirement. A man of old-school business acumen, he arrived at the penthouse like a general ready for war. I never liked those Davenports, he murmured to Alexander. Alastair is a vulture. I warned you. I know, father, Alexander said, exhausted. I thought I was doing the right thing for the company. Philip eyed Ava in the corner of the room. Now we do damage control. We will sever ties quietly or, if that fails, we will wage a public war. We can't let them destroy us. A few days later, Ava received a call from an unknown number. It was Lucinda. Sweet Ava, she greeted mockingly. I'm sure you're eager to see your husband free of me. Meet me tomorrow. Alone. Let's see if you have what it takes to save your precious marriage. Ava debated telling Alexander, but she knew this was a confrontation she had to face herself. She met Lucinda at a lavish private club. Lucinda, exuding wealth and poise, got straight to the point. It's simple, she said, her eyes gleaming. Walk away from Alexander. Divorce him. If you do, I'll let him out of the contract with minimal consequences. The Hastings name will remain intact. And if I refuse? Ava asked, her jaw tight. Lucinda's expression darkened. Then my father will escalate. The Hastings empire will suffer irreparable damage. Your child will inherit nothing but a father drowning in debt and scandal. Is that what you want? Ava's mind reeled. Lucinda was threatening not just her, but her unborn child's future. But she saw through the bravado. Do you really love him, or do you just want to control him? Lucinda gave a hard smile. Love doesn't matter. I enjoy power. The choice is yours, dear. In that moment, a silent vow formed in Ava's heart. I won't let you win. Quietly, she stood. I won't be blackmailed. Alexander and I will decide what happens to our marriage. Not you. She turned on her heel, ignoring Lucinda's warning hiss, you'll regret it. When she told Alexander about the ultimatum, his face hardened. She's desperate. She knows her father's legal hold is slipping. We found a loophole in the contract, a conflict of interest. It's not a guarantee, but it's hope. So, this isn't hopeless, Ava said, a sliver of tension easing. He knelt in front of her, placing his hands over hers on her belly. No more secrets, Ava. I swear it. I was foolish, letting greed cloud my judgment. I lost your trust, and I'll spend the rest of my life earning it back. That night, for the first time since the confrontation, Ava let herself lean into his arms, anchored by the child she carried and the faint hope that they could emerge from this crisis. The battle escalated. The Davenports leaked forged documents implicating Hastings Corporation in bribery. The media latched onto the story. The stress took a toll on Ava's health, and her doctor warned that she needed emotional stability for the sake of the pregnancy. Seeing her pale and weak, Alexander's resolve hardened. He and Philip worked tirelessly with private investigators and tech experts. Slowly, they unraveled the Davenport scheme, tracing the digital footprints of the forgeries back to a server owned by their company. Armed with this, along with a dossier on Alastair's own history of shell companies and questionable dealings, they prepared a counterattack. Alexander arranged a press conference. As reporters swarmed, Ava sat in the front row, her hand resting protectively over her belly. Alexander stepped to the microphone, his voice resonating with newfound strength. In recent weeks, he began, Hastings Corporation has faced serious accusations. We have a sacred duty to address these claims. The bribery allegations are entirely false. We have conclusive evidence that these documents were fabricated by individuals seeking to undermine our company. He gestured to his legal counsel, who held up the dossier. Our investigators uncovered the real source, a remote server owned and operated by Davenport Industries. Gasps echoed through the room. Furthermore, Alexander continued, we discovered substantial evidence of illicit practices by Davenport Industries. In light of these findings, our legal counsel has declared the partnership contract between our companies to be null and void. Effective immediately, Hastings Corporation is severing all ties with the Davenport conglomerate. A clamor of questions erupted. Alexander held up a hand. As for personal matters, I deeply regret any actions that have brought pain to my family. I ask that you respect our privacy moving forward. With that, they swiftly exited, leaving a media frenzy in their wake. In the days that followed, the tide turned. Federal investigations into Davenport Industries began. Alastair released denials, but the evidence was overwhelming. Cornered, Lucinda leaked grainy, intimate photos of her and Alexander, a last-ditch effort to humiliate him. The tabloids had a field day, but the public mood had shifted. Many saw Lucinda's leaks as the desperate, spiteful actions of a woman who had lost. Sympathy grew for Ava, the pregnant wife standing by her husband through a malicious storm. Soon after, Davenport Industries faced formal charges. Alastair was arrested for financial crimes and obstruction of justice. His empire crumbled, his assets were frozen, and his stock plummeted. In the chaos, Lucinda vanished from high society. She left desperate, unproven claims for Alexander that she was pregnant, that she had no money, but he forwarded them to his lawyers and refused to engage. Her credibility was shattered. The cunning mistress, who had soared high on illusions of power, had been brought down by the very fire she had started. Karma, it seemed, had been served. In the last month of her pregnancy, Ava retreated to her parents' home in Connecticut. Alexander visited regularly, not as a billionaire, but as a man trying to mend his broken family. He brought groceries, took quiet walks with her, and spoke of the future with a humility she hadn't seen before. One balmy afternoon, Ava's water broke. Alexander rushed her to the hospital, and after hours of labor, their son, Henry, entered the world with a healthy cry. Seeing Alexander cradle their newborn, tears of wonder in his eyes, Ava felt a powerful wave of love. Here was the man she had chosen, flawed, yes, but determined to atone for his mistakes. They stayed in Connecticut for a while, enveloped by family. Alexander took a long paternity leave, a break he once would have deemed impossible. He changed diapers, woke for midnight feedings, and simply focused on his wife and child. In quiet moments, they talked, went to therapy, and slowly began to heal. Months later, on a sunny day at the Hastings estate, they held a naming ceremony for baby Henry. Afterwards, Alexander asked Ava to meet him by the Rose Garden, the same place he had proposed. He handed her an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, balancing Henry on her hip. He exhaled. "Divorce papers. Signed. If you want them. You can have the penthouse, the alimony, full custody of Henry. I just want you to be free and happy." Her eyes misted. She looked at the papers, the ultimate gesture of penance. She remembered the heartbreak, the betrayal. But she also saw the man he had become, a father who had fought to save his family, who had humbled himself to right a grievous wrong. She let the papers drop to the soft grass. "I don't want a divorce, Alexander," she said softly. "I want a real marriage. I want honesty, respect, and love. If you can give me that, I'm willing to try again." He nodded, eyes brimming with relief. "I can. I will." They embraced, with baby Henry squirming happily between them, the fragrance of roses promising a new beginning. Their path wasn't easy, but it was real. They rebuilt their marriage not on a fairy tale, but on the solid ground of forgiveness, hard work, and unconditional love. The cunning mistress and her crooked father were left to reap the whirlwind they had sown, becoming a forgotten footnote in high society drama. For Ava and Alexander, what endured was a love that had weathered the storm, blossoming anew, stronger and more beautiful than ever before. Thank you for joining us on this emotional roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and redemption. Ava Hastings's story reminds us that love isn't just about shared vows, it's about fighting through the darkest storms life hurls at us. Caught in a devastating scandal, Ava faced disillusionment and panic, but her determination led her to seek truth, choose forgiveness, and ultimately build a stronger future for her family. Meanwhile, Lucinda and Alastair's ruthless ambitions brought them swift, merciless karma, proving that ill-gotten power rarely stands the test of time. If you've been captivated by this tale of secrets and second chances, show your support. Please hit that like button below, share the video with friends who crave a juicy drama, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll never miss any of our riveting stories packed with lessons, hope, and a dash of sweet, well-deserved revenge. Thanks for watching.